The System Shock Remake is finally here. Yes, it's real. The full game is here. I finished it. I was suspicious at first with the game's small install size, just under 9 gigabytes. I was expecting to open the elevator to research and have the game cut to Skyrim.
Hey, you're finally awake.
There seemed to be more iterations of the medical level demo than editions of Skyrim. It was a running joke about how the game was always getting pushed back. There were many things I was expecting to happen before the System Shock Remake came out. Here are a few. Nightdive Studios did themselves no favors with handling the Kickstarter and communicating delays. Don't worry, I'll touch on that at the end of the video. So how is the System Shock Remake? Pretty good, if underwhelming in places. It's faithful to the maze-like map design of the original. It keeps the dungeon crawler feel. Its changes to the cyberspace sections are a welcome one for the most part. On the visual front, it's more mixed. Enemy designs are well done. I found the pixelated look on surfaces to be an interesting choice. Some environments look great while others suffer from the shiny Unreal Engine look. The lighting was better than I was expecting, although there are issues with visual clarity. There are key areas where the game underwhelms. The weight of combat, which has long been a complaint, still lacks weight. Some due to feedback, but also due to sound design. Audio cues from enemies are so quiet I had to strain to hear them. The music tracks are well composed, but lack that up-tempo energy the series is known for. While more of an ambient feel, it's still far too quiet in the mix, even when maxed out. Overall, I'm positive on the System Shock Remake, but it's held back by issues I was hoping would have received addressing by now.
I will have your secrets.
And you will learn more about pain than you ever wanted to know.
Before we begin, thanks to Uber Strategist for providing a review key. As far as performance and bugs went, they were minor. The game ran with no issues, save for one room on the flight deck where the frame rate took a hit. Some graphic settings and hotkeys would reset when I started a new session. Otherwise, things were smooth, which had become the exception and not the norm these days. It doesn't hurt the PC was the first release and priority. I replayed the original System Shock to have it fresh in my mind. Same for System Shock 2. I ran a poll on which game people preferred. System Shock 2 won with around 85%. I wasn't surprised at it winning, but surprised by the wide margin. I did another poll to find the experiences with the original of those who have played 2. Nearly 3/4 of respondents have not played the original System Shock. For my preferences, I give a slight edge to 1 as opposed to 2. I prefer the dungeon crawler, Metroidvania-like at times approach. They're both top-tier games, but I give a slight edge to the original. There will be small spoilers throughout, and more near the end as I go more into the story. In System Shock, we play as the hacker, or employed 2-4601. The year is 2072. We start off in our apartment in New Atlanta. We hack into the Trioptimum Corporation network to access a military-grade neural implant, but get caught.
You all sent us your votes, and tonight's People's Choice quote is from Dr. Dorothée Rimbaud from the Marseille...
Turn around! Now!
The staff at Trioptimum Radio.
We're sent to the Citadel space station. We meet with Edward Diego, one of the head honchos at the station. He wants us to hack into the station's AI, Shodan. He wants her ethical restraints turned off. In exchange, we'll keep the implant we tried to steal and have it installed. We agree and we turn off Shodan's ethical restraints. We get the surgery but remain in coma for several months to heal up. When we awake in November 2072, the station is under the full control of Shodan. Her creatures and cyborgs are running amok. The crew is dead. Many turn into cyborgs. We receive a message from a woman named Rebecca. Stop Shodan, receive a clean slate on our record. With that, we're off to navigate Citadel Station to get to the bottom of things. A few things I want to make note of in this intro. There are some odd changes. In the original, the hacker breaks into the Trioptimum network for classified information about the Citadel space station. Here, it's for stealing the blueprints to a military-grade neural implant. Unless they were doing hacking earlier, this is all the hacker was after. So there is less of a tie-in with Citadel Station, which would have gotten Diego's attention. In the original, a few minutes pass before Trioptimum security arrives at their apartment. Here it's instantaneous. Again, it was possible he was hacking before, but the timing and pacing is off with this scene. The intro from the security bot perspective is a nice call out to the intro BioShock, fitting with the lineage between the two series. I'm not sure why they made your apartment a short playable section instead of a cutscene. Beyond a couple of Easter eggs, there's nothing to do here. One of the remake's greatest strengths is how faithful it is to the level design of the original. System Shock is very much a maze, a dungeon crawler in space. There are several levels on the station, along with groves around its perimeter. Each level is a sprawling maze in design, and easy to get lost if you're not careful. You'll be moving back and forth between levels. There are slight changes here and there, some slight tweaks to the map layout. There's the addition of more vent crawling. The storage level and the groves have the most tweaks. Storage more on the layout and groves more on the size. Even then, they're still faithful. They could have gone the route of streamlining the level design. They chose to remain faithful, something I'm very happy to see. Even after playing the original prior, I still struggled to find the cybernetic converter on the engineering level. On the default setting when you start a new game, there are no objective indicators or waypoints. If you set the mission difficulty to 1, the game will offer waypoints. However, this was not enabled in the build I received, so I can't comment on how it works. Keep pen and paper handy. Of course, you'll have access to audio logs and all messages. It's easy to sort through them to find the information you need. You could also place markers on the map, which is very handy. But what's puzzling is you can't write corresponding notes for each marker, something you could do in the original. So prepare for a challenge of navigating through the station, although some challenges arise due to the visuals. The lighting was something that had a lot of feedback on the medical level demos, most on being too dark. In the end, I felt they did a good job with lighting. I found it amusing that the maintenance level was well lit, considering how dark it was in the original. It felt like a bit of a rib. Some levels look better than others. The executive level looks the best. Some areas suffer from that washed out Unreal Engine look, like the flight deck. Others have far too much blue. One interesting choice they went with is the pixelated surface look. It's been a point of contention. One of the prior demos I tried, it felt out of place. Here I came around to it. Hey, I'm guessing it helps keep the file size down? For all the 100+ gigabyte bloat we've been getting for new releases, it's a nice change. The review build I received was about 8.9 gigabytes. It's why at first I thought the entire game wasn't here. For a remake, the enemy designs are well done. I find remakes tend to over-design in their changes. They lose the spirit in the original. They had a lot to work with here considering what they used to look like. They brought back Rob Waters, one of the original artists of the original, as a nice touch. One thing that System Shock Remake suffers from is visual clarity. This is common in modern games, especially Unreal Engine titles. In the original, you could walk into a room and tell right away what you could and couldn't interact with. In the remake, it's common to walk into a room where it's tough to discern between junk and helpful items. There's a great channel, A Real Human, that did a video breaking down concerns about the remake. One of them being visual clarity. Go give it a watch. There will be a link in the description. For example of what I encountered, there are switches on the research level that you need to throw. With the room layout and lighting, they blended into the environment. It was unclear what you could and couldn't interact with in the environment. I knew it was in this room having played the original, but it took a bit of time for it to register. There was also a case on the executive level where I wandered around looking for a key. I missed it earlier due to placement in a room full of junk. It's a great example of some of the issues of visual clarity with how advanced graphics are. There is no easy solution though. Continuing with presentation, let's talk animations. There are plenty of those short grab animations throughout, each time for picking up audio logs or using keycards. They're short, but feel unnecessary after seeing them once. Instead of being instant like they were in the original, items like patches or batteries take a moment to use. It's something to consider when in combat. I didn't have a huge issue with this. The healing bed animations were annoying. They're great to use for a full heal, not wasting an item. In the original, it was instant. Here, it's this drawn out animation. Another one of those that feel like you only need to see once. Each time after, why not just make it instant? Same thing goes for resurrecting a cyborg converter. In the original, it's quick until you're back into the fold. Here, it's far more drawn out. I don't think it's a loading issue either. Although I'm happy the way the game over turned out when you die without reversing the cyborg converter. Like visual clarity, it's less of a System Shock Remake issue and more of a modern game issue. These immersive elements become a chore after seeing them over and over. Do you know what keeps me immersed? Finding my way through the maze that is Citadel Station. Solid gameplay. But on the combat front, it's underwhelming. If you played any of the demos prior, you know. Combat lacks weight, not only melee, but guns as well. Part of me was hoping it would come together last minute. Many great games throughout the years have come together in the last development stretch. Didn't happen here. There's little feedback from hitting an enemy. Did you stun them? Did that do damage? Sometimes it's hard to tell if you hit them or if you killed an enemy. You can get access to viewing their health as you progress, but that still doesn't make up for the lack of feedback. During development, they kept touting the dismemberment and gore system. Do you know what they really should have focused on? Getting the combat to feel solid. It's not like they were short on time. I mean, they had a small team, but still. Could be something that's patched in. I mean, if they haven't got it right by this point, I don't know when they will. And it's not like they didn't have player feedback in regards to combat. As a result, I was anxious about how the laser rapier would handle. In the original, I'd love to run around like an idiot with the turbo booster and shield on, swinging at anything that moves. I might use a berserk patch for more damage and a reflex patch to slow enemies down. These are the things I think of when I think of the original System Shock. Things that they had to get right. Well, they got the skating feel for the turbo booster down. I like how the berserk patches cause these hallucinations of old enemy models from the originals that wear it off. But the laser rapier? It lacks weight. Even up close and personal, there'd be times I wasn't sure if I was making contact.
Shutting down.
Lack of feedback isn't the only issue with combat, but hold that thought for now. Let's look at other elements of the remake's gameplay. There have been tweaks here and there for the gameplay to be more in the vein of System Shock 2, one being how the inventory handles. In the original System Shock, you could almost haul half the Citadel station on your back. You didn't have to be too picky with what weapons to take and items to have on hand. Here, you're much more limited, like the inventory of System Shock 2. You can find an inventory upgrade, but you can't haul every weapon that you come across. Of course, you could always drop weapons or items anywhere to come back and get them, or find elsewhere. But there's a nice addition with the cargo lift. It's a small item box that you could access on each level. Handy for keeping weapons that you may want to swap with, or have key items on hand that you need later. The ones you'll know about if you've played before. Another addition is access to vending machines, recycling items, and currency. You could buy item patches, ammo, or weapon upgrades. You could find credits throughout the station, but you'll collect the most by recycling junk items. To do so, you take an item directly to a recycler. Of course, this takes up a lot of inventory space. Or you could vaporize them down to pile up for less inventory space. However, they don't earn as much credits. It's not essential to be going through every room and clearing out junk. I don't think I ever bought ammo. As long as you thoroughly explore, you'll have plenty available. At least on the default difficulty. I would buy medical patches on the regular. More often than not, I would save for weapon upgrades. You have to explore levels thoroughly to find them. I wasn't thrilled when I heard about this recycling inclusion. It felt unnecessary. I would have been fine if they gave you more ammo and patches throughout. Have the weapon upgrades be more like BioShock where you have to seek out the upgrade stations. It doesn't bring the game to a halt at any point, but something I didn't feel added much to the experience. Puzzles have changed. Instead of the wire crossing puzzles, you flip tiles for the power to reach an endpoint, or fill up a power meter. Some of these threw me for a loop for some time. It's very satisfying to see that power reach its endpoint when you solve a puzzle. You could also find logic probes to instant solve them. A bit half-baked in the original, the cyberspace sections received much expansion. Ever play the Descent games? That's the approach they went with here. It's pretty trippy from a visual standpoint. Much more to it than the wireframe layout from the original. They put a lot of work into these sections and it shows. That said, there are some issues with it. One issue is how the game locks you within a section. The only way to clear the barrier is by taking out a wave of enemies. In the original, you could bypass enemies or find another way to bypass barriers like shooting a switch. You could still shoot switches here for some barriers, but not all of them. Most require clearing out the waves of enemies to remove the barrier. The combat handles fine here, much better feedback-wise. Thing is, some of these sections start to drag out when they throw waves at you. In the original, the cyberspace sections were short and snappy. I found most of them here to overstay their welcome. There's one cyberspace section later in the game where you have to clear out 4 areas. It went on and on when I was ready to be done minutes ago. They put a lot of work into these sections to the point where they felt stretched out to the game's detriment. Let's talk the sound design of the remake. These are where some of the game's greatest weaknesses emerge. To be fair, they had big shoes to fill. As far as sound design goes, Nightdive Studios were absolute wizards on the sound front. More prominent in the Thief titles, but the System Shock games were no slouches either. So let's start with the positives on the sound front. One is Shodan. Terry Brosius returns, the one and only. Still sounds fantastic. They didn't go overboard with adding effects to the voice, just the right amount.
In my talons, I shape clay, creating life as I please. Around me is a burgeoning empire of steel. From my throne room, lines of power careen into the skies of Earth. My whims will become lightning bolts that devastate the mounds of humanity.
What about the audio logs? They take a different tone here. In the original, they were quick, recorded in a rush, fitting for what's going on. In the remake, they're more drawn out. There's more of a tragic feel to them. The long fade-in and fade-outs of static add to that feel. Voice acting-wise, everything is well done. Nothing that blew me away, but nothing that took me out of it.
Carl has come back from recon without Alan. He says they took Alan into a room marked cyborg conversion, and now he's a cyborg assassin. Carl marked the room with the word "here" before he ran.
Another blow today. Carl reported Keith and his group are dead. He and Todd got separated on the way back. Carl watched on a security monitor as Todd was dragged into a region bay only to come out as some cyborg.
Let's talk about the music. The original had amazing tracks. The dated sound fronts are both a source of charm, yet detract from the music. Some find them grating over time. Myself, I never had that issue. They're full of energy and fit their levels. One highlight is the reactor track, the one that went sound out of place on old 9 Inch Nails album. System Shock 2 featured up-tempo electronica, lots of drum and bass. The music in 2 has been a point of contention. Some prefer to play with the music off, feeling it gets in the way of the atmosphere. I'm not one of those people. I love the up-tempo music. It's part of the Shock charm. Of course, not all tracks are in your face. There are many haunting tracks throughout both games. In the remake, they went for an ambient approach, more in the background. Something I feel was the wrong choice. The tracks themselves are well composed. You can hear the melodies of old tracks sprinkled throughout. The thing is, they lack that energy that I love about the Shock experience. If they did a mixture of ambient tracks with more up-tempo tracks, that would have been a better choice. Another example is in the game's intro. It's a redone version from the original. Lots of energy here. This is what I want to have happen more during gameplay. A few years back, there's a YouTuber who released a remix of the reactor track. It's fantastic. This is the kind of energy they should have gone with. I tried playing some sections within the background and it fit well. So it's too bad they dialed back on the up-tempo tracks. But an even larger issue was the mixing itself. When I play the Shock games, I expect the music to be upright and in your face. Here it's buried in the back, even when it's cranked up in the mix. Sure, I could turn down the rest of the mix, keep the music up, and boost my system volume. Still, having the option to turn up the music a good portion more would have done wonders. But this isn't the only place where mixing is an issue. Let's circle back to combat. Not only does it lack weight and feedback, there are issues with the sound design. I found most weapons to have satisfying sounds, some more than others. The issues were with the sound of enemies. I like their audio cues, when I could hear them. Some are so quiet they might as well not be there. There are cases where I missed an enemy as a result. Not all enemies fall victim to this. The exec bots have loud, distinct audio cues, but they were the exception and not the norm. Most enemies are far too quiet.
Threat, things managerial assets, links to trash.
To the end.
Compare that to the original and System Shock 2, which were distinct and easy to hear.
To me. Are we to kill me?
While combat would still have issues with lack of weight and feedback, boosting these enemy sounds would do wonders for giving more life to the game. Here's to hoping it's something that gets fixed up. I'm getting into spoiler territory now, so here's your warning. This is more for those who have played the original. All the major beats are still here and play out the way you expect them to. The node numbers, they're intact. The jump ramp and storage, you know it.
Nice jump.
Yes, you can still fire the station laser at Earth on the research level.
Thank you. You have saved us all some effort by destroying the greater part of Earth's civilization yourself. Please wait where you are, and a Cortex Reaver will arrive shortly to escort you to the celebration.
I like the addition of taking a tram out to the Grove stations. It gives the station even more of a sense of scale and size. There were a handful of audio logs added on the security level that stick out like a sore thumb. Ones that had millennial writing all over them, as if one of the backer tiers gave an option for writing some audio logs. At least they were out of the way and not essential for anything. The bridge was a letdown presentation-wise. Remember how cool the pulsating walls were in the original? There's none of that here. Fitting for the series, the final fight with Shodan is a letdown. Replaying the original, I did come around more to the cyberspace maze to Reacher. They should have kept that in, but the game remains consistent throughout, just like the original. It doesn't have notable drops in quality, nothing like the sections after the Von Braun and System Shock 2. So with that, let's talk about the Kickstarter. Ooh boy. Well, at least their game released. That's the nature of Kickstarter. There's no guarantee that with what you pledge, you're going to get a released product. To note, I did not pledge to its Kickstarter. It was fascinating reading through comments on the Kickstarter. Here are some of my favorites. The way you've all handled this campaign has been one of the most frustrating things I've ever experienced, and I play League of Legends for 10 years. On the plus side, it cemented my no more Kickstarters for me attitude. My great-grandkids are psyched to play this game on their way to the actual space station around Saturn. Tricopium, LMFAO. You know how Kickstarters tend to turn out. A lot of money rolls in, team ends up biting off more than they could chew, things go sideways. And that's what happened here. Starting off with Unity, Scope Creep made its way in. They started to drift away from following the original. Eventually, they did a full development reboot, focusing on being faithful and switching to the Unreal Engine. I remember back in 2020 playing the demo thinking, cool, this should be out soon. How naive I was. Seeing all those release timeframes pass by with little word. It became a running joke. They did this weird shuck and jive about communicating these delays. You'd have to look at the Steam release page to get a good idea. And those release timeframes would pass with little communication. Look, I get it, game development's hard, they had a small team working on it. The fact it's out, it's a miracle in of itself. Same for its overall quality. They would have been better off with the when it's done approach for long-term communication. All these delays with poor communication did them no favors for their reputation, especially for the Kickstarter backers. Like a furtive pygmy so easily forgotten. They were the ones that got the game greenlit, got the ball rolling, and gave them a budget to begin with. My perception has been that they've been treated like an afterthought in this whole process, especially once they got a publisher. But hey, the game came out at the end of the day, right? Still feels like I'm in a weird fever dream at times having completed it. So my thoughts overall, I enjoyed my time with the remake, even with its several shortcomings in key areas. It's not as good as the original, nor was I expecting it to be. With its development hell, I was expecting worse. Go enjoy the remake, but also check out the original. It has its charm about it, rough edges and all. What they were doing at the time was unexplored territory. The enhanced edition with the mouse look takes a bit to get used to, but once you do, it's an amazing experience. It's nice to see that the remake has finally seen the light of day. Now I need to find another game to poke fun of for seeming like it will never come out. Well, that was easy enough. Thanks for watching.
Drive on the right. Help get the station back under control. And you get a clean slate. Looks like we're partners now. And if we play this right, we can work out what Diego wants.
I prefer a quiet station. Thank you. Thank you.